Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Archer's Garage and whatnot. Today we are back in the garage and we're doing some mechanical stuff today. And what are we working on today? Something that is near and dear to my heart, something that I truly love, and that is a Mustang. I love Mustangs. More importantly, Fox body Mustangs. I have owned 20 Mustangs personally, 19 of which have been Fox bodies. So I got a call the other day from a young man that has a Fox body, and he bought a transmission and some clutch parts and some other odds and ends, and he was wondering if I could work on it, and he dropped it off yesterday, so we're going to get to working on it today. So the car in question is right here behind me. I'm going to turn the camera around so you guys can see what we're doing. So here she is in all her glory, Mustang GT 5.0. I love these cars. When I was in college, that was my car, except mine was a GT. It was a silver LX, and I love these things. Like I said, I have had 19 of these, 20 Mustangs in total. 19 of them were Fox bodies. I love these things. Some of them were real fast, some were real slow. They're all Mustangs. They're all a lot of fun. So anyhow, this car, what we're doing to this. So he brought it to me with a transmission in the back of it. He drove it here, so it's got a transmission in it, but it's got some issues. So he bought a brand new transmission, or new rebuilt transmission. But I'm gonna go through it because he had some issues with the seller. He said at first when he bought it, he got a good feeling from him, and once the purchase went through, he didn't feel very good about it anymore. So he asked me to do a second opinion on it, which is very, very smart, because while it's out, now it's time to do it. So it's just like a doctor, you know, if you don't get the good feels about something, go get a second opinion. Cars are the same way. Car parts, same thing. And no sense going through all that trouble of getting your car taken apart, putting back together with a part that you don't know anything about. So I'm going to tear this transmission apart real quick and give you guys a step-by-step on how to do it. Alright guys, here she is in all her glory. Typical world-class T5, world-class Borg-Warner T5. This transmission is of course for the Mustang, but you can find T5s in a lot of different vehicles. You can find them in Mustangs, Camaros, S10s, Jeeps, all different configurations. Of course the Jeep will be a different output shaft because they'll have the transfer case on the back, but a lot of different vehicles use the T5. It's a good transmission. Good, reliable, good, smooth shifting transmission. In my initial inspection of this one, it looks like they have a new transmission, or it looks like they didn't go to a junkyard and just clean one up and sell it to the guy. So I'm happy about that. Input shaft looks new. It's good and tight. This is kind of misleading though. A lot of people will just go, if they're trying to buy a used one, they'll say, oh yeah, it's good and tight. I'll show you something in a few minutes. That's not the greatest check, but it is a decent check. But this one here looks brand new. I mean, you can see there's not any wear or any pitting on it. Your throwout bearing retainer, it looks new. It looks like it's got some rust on it, but one thing that's good, because from the factory they come with aluminum and they always get worn out from the throwout bearing. So it's good that it is steel, because aluminum doesn't rust, of course. But the owner said that he's got a new one in there just because of this. And if it truly is in there, I'll replace this for him, just because we have it, right? And although if it were mine, I wouldn't have any trouble putting that in there in my car. But you know, if it makes you feel better, you do it, right? So it's got a new output shaft seal. New shifter bushing, so everything looks new. But we're still going to open it up. I'm not going to do a full rebuild on this because that doesn't make sense, but I'm going to open it up and do a good once over, and that way the owner has a good idea of what he's got, so he has some peace of mind. You know, he paid probably over $1,000 for this thing, and you don't want to go throw this thing in the car and not know what you've got, especially if he had a less than stellar performance with the guy, or less than stellar transaction with the guy, and just go ahead and do it now rather than put it in the car and it not be what they said it is. And I'm going to do my best to do basic hand tools on this so you can see that this is something that anybody can do with basic hand tools if you were buying a transmission. It's as simple as you can get. 15 millimeter bolts here on the tail shaft, 10 millimeter bolts on the top shaft. Roll pin, that's, I mean, you're going to need a punch for that, but that's nothing too fancy. It's simple. But I'm going to set you guys down and we're going to get started on this. Alright, the first thing we want to do is knock out this roll pin that holds the shifter in. Now they make punches that have a little nipple on them to hold them in there, and I've got a set somewhere. I just couldn't find it this morning. We just moved in this house not long ago, and I don't know where it is. You don't want to go too far because you need to drive down in the case. And also, I'm going to show you why it's very important to not forget to take that out once you get this off real soon. A mistake that I have personally made, and I don't ever want to make it again because it was a nightmare. So anyway, so that is done. We can get that when we slide the tail shaft back. Let me grab my 15 and my 10s. Alright guys, you can do this with sockets. I'm going to do it with a wrench just because that's what I've got. That's what I'm doing. I've made a mistake. I said your first step you want to do your roll pin. Your first step you want to make sure it's out of fluid. This here says it's out of fluid, so I'm good about that. But yeah, if you crack this thing open and it's got no fluid in it, you're making a mess all over your floor. So don't do that. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 15 millimeter bolts you need to take off of your tail shaft. And your tail shaft will slide back. Very simple. Alright guys, I got all my 15 millimeter tail shaft bolts out. Now we need to remove the tail shaft. So you can get in here with a pry bar up against this bolt, and the front of your tail shaft there's a lip. You pry away, keeping an eye on the shifter in here, make sure it does move. You don't want to overextend your shift fork. It's getting there. It's just a little bit of finesse, guys. That's all. There we go. All right. So remember what I said about your roll pin. You want to make sure you get it all the way out and it doesn't stick in the bottom of this. One time, one of the first ones that I ever did, I wasn't paying that much attention. I did that. When I went back together, I couldn't find my roll pin. Oh, okay, well I just got a new roll pin, stuck it in there, and it drove my roll pin. See if you can see this. Down, 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 and it wedged itself in the case. And I had to cut all this apart. Luckily I had a spare one. But yeah, don't do that. Just make sure your roll pin has come out. Much easier that way. There we go. The only negative I've got so far is there's a lot of styrofoam in here from their packing. But, you know, that's just... Alright, so far so good. This is your speedometer gear. This is 5th gear. Everything's good so far. They used plenty of grease. They didn't put it together dry. Alright, now I'm going to remove all my 10 millimeters from the top. We'll be right back. Alright guys, so we got the 10 millimeters out of our shifter fork case. Now the only ones that you have to be mindful of where they go, you have these two little guys here that have the shoulder. It's very obvious where they go because those holes are bigger than the rest and that lines everything up. Then you have one that has a stud on it. It goes here beside this ear. That one's not as important because so it's for a harness connector, and most of these Mustangs are so old they don't even have them on there anymore. But anyhow, the way this goes is you take a screwdriver and you break the seal, right? And that seal is just a silicone that they use so it doesn't leak, right? Then it slides over. Work it all the way. Alright, so the seal's broken. Then you slide it and lift it up. There we go. Just like that. Alright. Alright, first inspection. Looks pretty good. They used plenty of assembly lube in here, so it's not going to be run dry first time you go to shift it. Your shift pads in here are all new. These here wear out over time, you know, you're shifting gears and whatnot. This looks very, very good. Not at all upset with it. All the teeth look really good. Looks nice and clean inside. And again, plenty of assembly lube. I am going to take it one step further. I'm going to knock off 5th gear and I'm going to take out the main shaft so I can look at the input shaft and the input shaft bearing. But initial inspection, I'm actually pretty happy with this. However, the customer wanted this done so he have a better peace of mind, and I don't blame him. He didn't have the warm and fuzzy coming from this shop, and I think he made the right decision by getting this inspected. Why would you go through, you know, a 5, 6, or 7 hour job of throwing this in, and you know, if you're in your driveway doing this yourself, and what if it's your first time and this thing's wrestling with you and all this, and you put it in there and it's no good, when you can do this and it takes an extra hour and a half, 2 hours of your time. That's the right way to do it in my opinion. But everything's looking good. So what I'm looking at right now is the spacing between the gears and also the synchronizers to make sure I can't even think this morning, the blocks aren't worn out, and they all look brand new. But anyway, I'm going to turn you guys off again. Actually no, I'm going to go ahead and do it. Where's my punch? I'm going to knock off 5th gear. There's a roll pin here. We'll knock him off. Like I said, there's roll pins that have a little nipple on them, and it goes inside the roll pin, and it makes it so much easier. I just don't know where mine are right now. But this one will do the job eventually. I don't know if it's just me or if everybody does it. When I'm punching a pin through, I always spin my punch to make sure it's not binding on something. And I don't know why I do it, but I've always done that. and it'll let you know right away if there's a problem. But something I do anyway. And it is the same size as this one, so it doesn't matter if you get them mixed up, so don't worry about that. All right, so next you've got a clip here, a C-clip. So I'm gonna go get my C-clip tool, and I'll be right back. All right, so I got my C-clip remover, and there's still more packing stuff in here. So far, that's the only downside I've seen about this transmission is their packing material. But you know, you can't really fault the guy that built it. Here's your C-clip. Now you want to be as careful as you can pulling this off. You don't want it to fall apart, and then you got to put the synchronizer all back together. Hold it all together if you have to do any banging. Alright, here's the synchronizer, and there's a blocking ring. Now, 5th gear is the only one that uses a brass blocking ring. The rest of them are all carbon, unless it's a non-world class G5. So like I want to say it was 86, and before they were all brass. That's one thing that makes it a world class T5 is the fiber blockings. And again, your shift tabs in here look new, well lubricated. Okay. All right, now you can pull 5th gear off there. It just slides on the shaft, no problem there. Okay. Now I need to take my retainer off the front. So I'm going to leave you guys alone. I'll be right back when I get my 13mm. Alright guys, so I've got the 413s that hold this guy on. Now when I'm looking down inside here, what I'm looking at the space in between my blocking rings and the synchronizers. And if it's just slap worn out, you'll see that there's just no space in here. It'll just be, it's kind of one of those things you have to do a couple of them to understand. But what I'm seeing, here, let me grab some here. In here, you see there's plenty of space in here. Well, not focused on. There's plenty of space, so you can tell that guy's new. This guy's new. You can tell all this stuff is new. I believe I said it at the beginning of the video, but I may not have. But anyway, a lot of people, you'll see them when they go to buy a used T5, they'll grab the input shaft and shake it around, and oh, that thing's good and tight. I'm going to show you why that's not the greatest check. It's a good check, not the greatest check. But I'm going to go ahead and set you guys down. I'm going to take this off. Oh, and to take this off, you see this little spot right here? Get your screwdriver in there. Well, my screwdriver's too big. I probably have to get a smaller screwdriver. Well, I can go in here. And it just pops off. See? It just pops off. No biggie. Anyhow, I'm going to set you guys down. I'm going to pull out the main shaft, and I'm going to show you why the wiggling of the input shaft isn't the greatest check. Whoop. Sorry guys, don't get seasick on me for the way I set you up. So this guy's off. Input shaft, you have to rotate it until the groove lines up with the counter shaft on the bottom. This groove here lines up with the bottom 4th gear, and then you can pull it out. Now, what I'm talking about, the wiggle test, I have personally seen, let me see if I'm getting in here. I have personally seen people take these things apart, take paper, shove them in this bearing, put it all back together, and take it to a swap meet at a Mustang show and sell them. I have personally seen that. So that's not a good check, because that paper takes up space. You have a nice input shaft, and it's not a good thing to do. But anyhow, this input shaft looks good. I have seen these. This is 4th gear. 4th gear isn't actually a gear. It's the locking the two shafts together. But for the sake of argument, we'll call it a 4th gear. I have seen this so sharp you can cut yourself on them. So this one you can tell is brand new. The bearing's good. Then it's got an inner bearing in here that the rear part of the shaft goes into. If this were a Cobra transmission, it would have a tapered bearing like this on that shaft that goes in here in a bearing race. This is not a Cobra transmission. So that's the difference there. So anyway, that looks very good. That's your input shaft, right? Here's your blocking ring. Looks brand spanking new. Happy about that. How's the blocking ring work? You're going down the road, you want to change gears, you pull back on your shift fork or push forward, whichever the case is. This thing will push up against this. It will stop the rotation of a said gear and allow the synchronizer, whichever one it is, to slide onto these grooves. That's how blocking shafts or blocking rings work with a synchronizer. That's that. Okay. All right. So to get this out, while I was working with this, the race already popped out, which is very common. Nothing to worry about. Tilt this down. And out she comes. This is your main gear cluster. Alright. First gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear is your input shaft that we've already pulled off. Reverse is a straight cut gear. That's why reverse is so noisy. But all of your synchronizers and blocking rings look really good in here. And like I said, well lubricated. You can see the grease on here. So this thing under a first startup is not going to run dry. I'm really happy with what I'm seeing. I think he was overly cautious, which is not a bad thing. I probably would be too if I didn't get the good feels about a shop that I just dropped $1,000 or $1,200 bucks, whatever it was for, right? All this is good and tight. Show you guys in here again. This is your counter shaft. So essentially the way the transmission works, it'll send power from your engine through your input shaft, through your counter shaft, and whatever synchronizer is locked in, the power transmits back through the output shaft. That's the basic function of a manual transmission. But yeah, it looks really good in there. I think the guy got a square deal. We'll put it back together, seal it up with some good silicone, and throw this puppy in. All right, guys. So I was going through my videos, getting ready to upload, and I found out that the last part of the last section got cut off because I don't have enough storage in my phone because I'm an idiot and I don't erase things. So anyhow, what I was saying is I will be putting this transmission in the Mustang over the next couple of days. I will be replacing the clutch, the flywheel, rear main seal, motor mounts, all kinds of stuff, power steering pump, all this stuff. I'll probably make a couple different videos of it. Is a good how-to on how to do these at your house, so you don't have to pay shops thousands of dollars to do all this mess. And I probably won't do basic hand tools like I do on a lot of my videos, just because that's a lot of work laying on your back using basic hand tools. So I probably won't do that. But it is something you can do with basic hand tools laying on your back in your garage. So no need to go to a big money garage and pay, you know, $80 or $100 an hour to some guy that's as skilled as you are. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a transmission. There are literally 4 bolts to hold this guy on, right there, 4 bolts. The bell housing is another story. There's more bolts to hold that, and the clutch, you have to be a little skilled to do that. But a little bit of initiative, hand tools, you can do all this stuff. And I hope with what I showed you today, you don't get taken on a used transmission. I hope that you can feel confident that you can buy a transmission and the person that sells it to you will let you tear it down and look at it. I mean, what we've done here is not, I mean, it's involved, but it's nothing that's going to change anything on the transmission. You know what I mean? So you're not going to tear something apart and not be able to put it back together. This is very simple. It's a T5 transmission. There's millions of them made. If the guy won't let you do it, move on to the next one. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and throw this thing back together and get ready to put it in the car over the next couple of days. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it's helpful. If you have any questions, put them in the link. If you like the channel, subscribe, like it, do all that good stuff. And I hope to see you next time on Archer's Garage and Whatnot. See you guys.